Hello, everyone. Just waiting for a few more folks to arrive, and then Dan, our interpreter, will voice for myself. And we have with us today Dr. Angela Scruggs. She will present in English, and Dan will interpret for her into ASL. So while we're having our presentation going, everyone mind having their cameras off so we have a more positive viewing experience. In addition to that, make sure that all participants are muted so that way we don't have any interruptions during the presentation. In addition to that, Angela has another colleague who will be a co-presenter, if I have that correct. So when we switch over for that, she'll be spotlit, and then we'll go back to Angela. Angela will finish up her presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer session. And in addition to that, we will have some poll questions as well at the end of our session. You can please leave all your questions in the chat box. So if you don't want to forget any of your questions during the presentation, you can type it in the chat and we will get to it at the end during that question and answer session. So if there's nothing else, I will just add that my name is Brenda Boaz Pond. I am here at the Library Services, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I'm the library coordinator. So, okay, thank you and welcome, Dr. Angela.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you for inviting me to join you all on this November Lunch and Learn. And I'm excited to be a part of this opportunity just to continue to share about working with the deaf and hard of hearing community. And in particular, today's Lunch and Learn is about breaking barriers and building belonging, mental health through mental health in the deaf and hard of hearing community. So I will go ahead and share my PowerPoint. I will say, Brenda, feel free to, give me in the chat or however you need to. I sometimes lose track of time because I'm so passionate about this. I can just talk for days. So if I am getting close to needing to wrap up, and if you think I'm just dragging it out, feel free to redirect me to get it to wrap up. So give me one moment. Let me share my PowerPoint and then we will dive in today. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Okay. So as I was saying, today our Lunch and Learn is about how do we first tune into ourselves, our communities, and the spaces that we share, and how do we use those spaces and places to break barriers and build more belonging in the deaf community through the lens of mental health. And that's what we're going to focus on for this Lunch and Learn today. So again, as Brenda mentioned, my name is Dr. Angela Scruggs. I am a licensed professional counselor, licensed here in the state of Tennessee. I'm also licensed in the states of Louisiana and Texas, as well as an approved telehealth provider for the states of Florida and Delaware. And I am licensed in all of those states because I wanted to try to make myself more accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community. And along with my private practice, I also have a nonprofit called the Deaf Wellspring Center, where we also provide hope and healing and support for children and families and individuals that are going through hard places and hard times in life. So let's talk about what the purpose and promise is for this Lunch and Learn workshop today. You will gain some insight, hopefully, into how trauma shows up differently in deaf spaces. And I'd like to also say that I would love for this to be interactive. So feel free to put type in the chat your response, because we definitely want this to also be an engaging time together, instead of just a lecture style. We definitely want to engage with you all that have joined today. Also, we want to give you all some practical strategies for co-regulation, connection, and sensory safety, as well as how can you re-engineer your environments, whether that's school or home or community centers, churches, to have real access and a felt sense of safety and belonging. So first, I wanted to start out by setting the foundation and talking about the brain. The brain is our lifeline, to our body, our emotions, our thoughts. And so a lot of times when we are struggling when it comes to mental health, we don't think about how powerful or the role of the brain in mental health challenges. So I want to start there today. And we like to talk about, we say, what's under the hood? I do have a co-presenter who will share here in a moment about a tool we use called Check Your Engine. So we want to use that concept today. And if you look at this slide, I want to explain to you what this hand diagram is here. This is a model that was developed, or a concept rather, that was developed by Dr. Dan Siegel in a way to try to explain what happens in our neurobiology when it comes to emotions, when it comes to like I said, emotions, our thoughts, emotional reactivity, which we see not only in children. It's easier maybe to identify in children when a child is dysregulated. You typically see what? Screaming, yelling, crying, sometimes kids running away, those types of things. But we also see this in adults as well. So this information is not only beneficial for us and how we engage with children, but also how we engage with other adults, okay? So again, we have the hand-brain model. And so if you look here on the screen, we use the open hand as an example. And so if we look at here at the top 4 fingers, that is to a way to identify or demonstrate the part of our brain that helps us to use logic, to helps us to think, rationalize, and make wise decisions. So that's our prefrontal cortex. That's this part of the brain, your forehead, what's behind your forehead. That part of the brain is called your prefrontal cortex. And so it helps you with logic, self-control, regulation, problem solving, critical thinking. A lot of those things that we sometimes look at our kids and we think, what are you doing? Or what are you thinking? A lot of times they're not. Their brain, that prefrontal cortex, which is also called our executive director, it does not fully mature until for males, typically late 20s, early 30s, and for females, late 20s is when that full maturation happens. So that's why even in young adulthood, you will see some questionable maybe behaviors sometimes. So the hand-brain model, we put the thumb in and we curl over the 4 fingers here. And when the brain looks like this, if you look at my profile, it kind of does look like a brain. This here is the brain, would be like the brain stem and the cerebellum, which you see right here at the bottom of the diagram. And if we open this back up and if you look at the thumb, you see the different color and emotions that are on the thumb. That's because this thumb is what we call our amygdala. I like to call it attitude Amy. It's AMY GADLA, amygdala. And I think I spelled that right. And so this is our emotion center. It does not think, it only acts. Okay. Your amygdala is about the shape and size of an almond, and it's on both sides of your brain. And so when we have any strong emotion, whether we feel like it's danger or fear, our amygdala pops on. And so what we call that is, we call that our when we're here, this is showing a regulated state. This means that we are able to think, rationalize, and make wise decisions. Our executive director is on, okay? But when the hand goes up like this is called a flipped lid. This means we are in our downstairs brain and we are not thinking. We are just reacting. Let me lower my hand. Zoom automatically does that. So when we think of kids who have trauma or kids who oftentimes it happens in the deaf and hard of hearing community may have language deprivation, it's important for us to remember that trauma and language deprivation can cause one to be stuck in their downstairs brain, in their survival part of their brain. And so I think setting this foundation of understanding will help as we think about how do we create a sense of belonging in all of the spaces where we live, where we work, where we play. And so our role is to help the nervous system feel safe enough to learn and connect. So if a child or an adult is dysregulated, how do we help them to regulate? And that means how do we help them to calm their brain down? And this is how I sign it: dysregulation and regulation. How do we help them to calm their brains down so that they can think, make rational decisions, demonstrate self-control, and learn? And it also allows us to be able to connect. So I want to discuss this a little bit further, and I like to show this because this is a way that I describe this to children. This is one of my books that one of my favorite books that I use with children in explaining how the brain works. And the book is called The Animals in Your Brain by Sarah Joseph. If you search it on YouTube, there are other people that read the book, but she also reads the book on YouTube and shows the pictures and goes through the entire book. And so if we think back again about the hand-brain model, you can see the brain there in the middle of the page. Again, we call the part of our brain that helps us to think, rationalize, and make wise decisions. We call that the prefrontal cortex. That is the prefrontal cortex right here. And we call that the wise old owl. Then, if you, again, open your hand right here in this emotional center, if you look in the middle of this slide here, you see what they call Derek, what she calls Derek the guard dog. And Anthony the ape is down here a little bit lower. I think I'm going to see if I can get a little fancy here and circle these on the screen. So you've got Derek the guard dog and Anthony the ape. Derek the guard dog is the part of the brain that acts. It acts before it thinks. And when it does, when it barks, when it senses danger or dysregulation, it alerts Anthony the ape. And Anthony is ready to go, ready to fight, ready to get in there and protect. So Anthony the ape is the part of our brain that triggers the fight, flight, freeze. And more recently included is fawn, F-A-W-N. And that means being more of a people pleaser type of person. And so what happens is when that amygdala is triggered and when your lid is flipped, your prefrontal cortex, your ability to think, rationalize, and make wise decision goes offline. It is not working. And this is why sometimes as parents, as adults, if we're trying to talk to a child or another adult in a rational way, and we're just not getting through to them, a lot of times it's because they are still dysregulated. And what we would say, they are not in their choosing mind. Then we have what Sarah Joseph calls Elsa the elephant. And that part of the brain is our hippocampus. And that's right here on the screen, this part of the brain. And that part is what controls our memory. It helps us to learn. It helps us to remember things. And it also helps us to distinguish between what's real danger and what's perceived danger, but not actual danger. It works well with the wise old owl. So as you all are thinking through this presentation, and as I'm giving this presentation, I'm also giving you tools that you can work with. So, and you can use, again, wherever the spaces are that you work, live, and play. This is, again, dysregulation, and this is regulation. And so when a child or when an adult is dysregulated, oftentimes they need someone to co-regulate with them. And so when someone is dysregulated, and if we get dysregulated, then who's going to help regulate the other? So when someone else is dysregulated, if we can keep ourselves regulated, then we can co-regulate with the other person who is dysregulated. That is the beauty of the brain. And something else, a part of the brain, is called our mirror neurons. And so if we are calm, and we're mirroring or modeling calm, it can also transfer to the person who is dysregulated. So this slide here, I like to use this because it gives a great summary of what we just talked about. So you see in the middle of the page, it has the staircase. And on this left side of my screen, it shows you the prefrontal cortex part of the brain. You can see it talks about how this is your closed and calm lid. You can make decisions. This is where empathy comes in and focus. You're ready to learn or you're ready to listen. You are able to think. And then when you are dysregulated, it shows you that it's the downstairs brain, your fight, flight, and freeze. You have big emotions, and you're really focused on survival and safety. And this is when we have a flipped lid. This is our, if you will, our danger, danger, danger zone. And so I like to use this graphic here because it really it brings all of that information together very well. On this slide, this is just, again, a synopsis of what I've talked about when it comes to the brain. But what I wanted to point out here on this slide and why I like to include it is the name it to tame it part of this, this thought process. Because when we are dysregulated, if we can figure out what it is that has caused our lid to be flipped, if we can name it, then we can tame it, which means if I know what has triggered me, if I know why I'm dysregulated, then it helps me to understand what has happened, and it helps me to develop ways to better manage that in the future, ways to calm my brain down and engage with the upstairs brain so that I can resume a sense of control and a sense of regulation. So, the brain is such a powerful part of who we are. The brain also has what's called neuroplasticity. And basically, it's a big word to mean that we can retrain our brain. And so I just think that is so amazing. Even if someone has experienced trauma, even if someone has experienced ongoing chronic stress, there are ways to reroute, if you will, or retrain the brain to operate differently through neuroplasticity. Of course, that's going to be much easier the younger we are, and the more difficult it is when we're older, but it is a tool that we can use. So again, when we're thinking about how do we break barriers and build belonging, I think this foundational information is so important because when we engage with people, let's say maybe that person who comes to the library and they're upset and they're dysregulated, and sometimes immediately we become dysregulated and upset. But if we can take a step back and think about what's behind the behavior, think about they may be operating in their downstairs brain, then we can maybe approach them or engage with them differently. So again, a tool that we use to teach this to children and families and adults is using the zones of regulation check your engine activity. And so Sherelle is an intern. She is a clinical counseling student at Gallaudet University, and she's going to talk to us and explain the check your engine activity and tool that we use. And then after that, I'll come back on and I'll tie that together and we'll talk about this some more. But I do want to say before she starts, we are working with the Tennessee Council for the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing in their mental health work group. And one of the things we're doing is going to all of the 6 centers, deaf centers, and having a mental health awareness event or awareness day. And we use this activity at those events. The next one we will have will actually be this Friday in Knoxville at the Knoxville Center. And so if you are in that area, feel free to come join us. It's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. because we will not only go over this activity again, but you would get a chance to make your own engine and take that home with you. So Sherelle, go ahead and share with us about the Check Your Engine.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Scruggs, for your explanation about the Check Your Engine model. So I'll get into it. I want everyone to think about this blue zone here. So I would like to know what kind of animal comes to mind when you think about the blue zone.
And just for clarification, the blue zone is the zone where your engine is slow. You may feel sad, tired, or bored. And so what Sherelle is asking is like, what animal comes to mind for you that would fit in the blue zone?
I'm seeing sloth in the chat. I'm also seeing Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. I didn't think of that one. That's a great example. That one's never come to mind. So, as mentioned, what we typically think of is a sloth for that blue zone. Right? Sloths are slow, they're tired, they have an extreme lack of energy. Thank you. Thank you. So on this next slide here, we'll talk about the green zone. The green zone represents more of a calm engine, that you are motivated, that you are ready to learn, that you're happy, that you are excited. So for that zone, for that green zone here, what comes to mind for that? What animal might you think of that really exemplifies the green zone here? A golden retriever. I'm seeing turtle. Okay, okay. Yeah, those are great. So for us, what we normally will talk about is an owl. I'm seeing happy from Inside Out. Yes, yes, yes. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the what animal or even some characters from movies that relate to the green zone. So now moving on to the yellow zone. Right, the yellow zone can be thought of as either frustrated or silly or feeling a little wild or feeling anxious. Right, it's a revving engine. So what examples might you have here? What characters might come to mind? What animals might come to mind when we consider the yellow zone? A bird. Awesome. Okay. Any others? Any others? Well, here we normally we tend to use a monkey as a clear example, right? They are really wild. We also can sometimes think of a squirrel, right? Squirrels tend to be quite anxious, right? We can even think about that adjective use of squirrely, right? So we can think about that. So in our next slide, we'll talk about our final zone, this red zone. The red zone is an engine out of control. It's exploding. It is angry. So for this, what kind of animal or what film character, what characters from film or what films in general, what might you think of for the red zone here? Seeing a lion. Yeah, when a lion roars, I'm seeing tiger. Oh, I see a Hulk. Yes, the Incredible Hulk, a bear, or a hippo. Absolutely. A hyena. I'm seeing a hyena as well. These are all awesome, awesome answers. So we typically use a cheetah as an example. Our rationale for this is that cheetahs tend to seem more out of control. Or we can also think of a mad dog as well, sort of barking out of control as examples of the red zone. So I hope we can see some of you in Knoxville this Friday. And we'll show you more details about how to make your engines. And I will pass it off back to Dr. Scruggs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherelle. Thank you for sharing that. And so again, this is so important because it is foundational with how the brain works and just giving you more clarity and understanding with understanding the brain and understanding even your interactions with others. And so, for example, one of the ways that I use this is in particular with children. And I want to say this. When we did this workshop in West Tennessee, there was someone that says, "Oh, I think I should use this with my spouse." I was like, "You very well can." And there are some couples that we work with that will use this and they will say, "What color are you today?" Or "What color are you right now?" And if they say, "Oh, I'm yellow or I'm red," then the other spouse or partner knows, maybe I need to just, maybe they need some space. Maybe I need to back up. Or for some of us, when we are feeling dysregulated, we want someone to come toward us as opposed to moving away from us. So understanding the red zones, understanding how the brain works, it can all help us to build connection. And this is a foundational concept used by Dr. Karen Purvis, one of the developers of what's called TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And it is a trauma-informed, attachment-based therapeutic model. I am a TBRI practitioner, as well as Sherelle has recently become trained in TBRI as well and is a practitioner. And one of the things that Dr. Purvis says is that we want to have connection before correction. Oftentimes, when someone is dysregulated, we want to go straight to correction. And if that doesn't go well, which in many cases it doesn't, we want to step back and say, how have I connected with this person? How have I empathized with this person to be able to get their brain to a regulated place so that they can receive or accept correction, even if it's gentle correction? And so we wanted to bring this concept to you. Connection can, of course, look like eye contact, a warm tone. I like to say a warm tone of face, especially if we're talking about in the deaf community. A simple facial expression can say a whole lot, you know? And so there's a difference in saying, saying something with a furrowed brow and your eyes squinched together and, and you're leaning forward, as opposed to having a more relaxed face and having an approach that is more of a curiosity versus a judgment. And so, and sometimes just being with someone, maybe not necessarily trying to fix it or figure it out, but just holding space with them and for them and just being with them in that moment of that dysregulation. Also offering opportunities of empowerment. A lot of times when people are dysregulated, they already really feel out of control internally, and they may feel like they don't have control externally as well. So if we can offer choices and give them a sense of control, even if it's within boundaries, here are two choices, I can give you this or that. It can give them a sense of control. It can help, again, to try to calm the brain so that they can think, rationalize, and make wise decisions. And then we'll also give you some sensory tools that you can use. And you can use those, or having a break, drinking water, or some other coping skills or tools that can be used. And then when it comes to correction, we also, you've probably heard the phrase, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And most times, I don't know anyone that really likes correction. A lot of times, though, it's not what we say, it's how we say it. And so, again, if we're coming alongside them, wanting to maybe have what we call having a redo, which is essentially what it says here is, let's try that again together. Those are ways to help build that connection before we go into correction or before we try to even regulate the person that is feeling dysregulated. And so, with the check your engine, if you have connection first, as it says here, it's like fix the leak, don't blame the light. So if you see an issue, sometimes if we just go for correction, we're only putting a Band-Aid on it. And we want to start with connecting so that we can really get that regulation and then be able to move forward in a healthy way. So I know we're talking right now about how the brain works, but when we think about the barriers, oftentimes these are barriers to feeling a sense of belonging, to feeling understood, to feeling heard, to feeling accepted, to healthy communication and interactions. And again, this is not just for children and families. This is from colleague to colleague, from, boss to employee. This is true in any type of relationship. And so when we think of children or individuals that have had language deprivation, this is compounded for them because of that language that was missing so early on. That language that is not there often means that they also don't have the emotional language, or what we would call emotional literacy, to be able to even regulate themselves or to even be able to communicate the dysregulation that they are experiencing. And so it's so important that we work on building emotional literacy. And in the next slide or two, as we talk about what that can look like in various spaces, that could mean having an emotion chart somewhere in your facility or organization or place of business that can just, I think of it like when you go to the doctor's office and you see maybe the HIPAA document or some other things that are on the wall, or a picture of the body, like some anatomy pictures. Think of it similarly. We learn some things, what's called incidental learning, just because we are alive. And so if you happen to have emotion words or emoji faces and emotions on the board, or if you have the ability to have a video in your place of business that kind of shows announcements and other things on it, you could even have videos that are showing emotion words and what those emotions look like. Because a lot of times, especially in the deaf and hard of hearing community, individuals often go misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed or seen as just having behavior problems because they don't have the language to communicate and express. And those that are working with them and may be doing the diagnosing may not even have the cultural context to understand what they might be struggling with. And so healing requires access to language, not just services, because that language will help facilitate mental and emotional wellness and healing. So now let's talk about what some things are that you guys can do to help foster this sense of belonging and acceptance and emotional wellness and literacy in the places where you live, work, and play. One of the things that I love is creating a sensory station, or a sensory box, or a regulation station. It can look a lot of different ways. For some clients that I work with, we work with figuring out where in their home can they create a sensory corner or a calm down corner. I myself keep a sensory box in my house as a tool so that it teaches children how to self-regulate. We definitely want to start with co-regulation, but as we build that co-regulation, the goal is to teach them how to be independent in being able to regulate self. So here are some ideas of things that you all can do. And of course, you want to modify this to fit where you again, live, work, or play. So we have having a calm corner. This could include having a weighted lap pad or a heated blanket. They also have weighted stuffed animals that you can use. Also having things that are visually calming and or textured items. Those things can help. I have this pillow that has sequins on it, and when you rub it one way, it turns one color, and you rub it the other way, it changes another color. So you have that visual, but it also is just that texture. I could sit there and rub that pillow almost all day because it's just fun and just feels good to just go back and forth over that pillow. Also having breathing jars, or this is basically talking about how do we build in breath work in a way where you're not just saying to someone, I think you should take a couple of deep breaths. How many times have you tried to use that and that did not go well? But you can say, let's blow out candles. And so that's a way to teach some breathing or do breathing together. One of the other tools that I like to use is what we call hills and valley, or mountains and valley breathing. And so basically you take your hand and you go up the mountain, and at the top you hold. So when you go up, you inhale, and when you get to the top, you hold for 4, and then you go inside your thumb down, and as you're going down, you exhale, and then you keep repeating that through all the fingers. You go in, hold, out. It's so funny because when I teach this to kids, sometimes kids have had to remind me that I should breathe. I remember one time I was with a child that I work with, and we were out. And I was becoming dysregulated, not because of them, but because of something that was happening in the environment. And they turned to me and they said, and I just chuckled because I just said, you know what? They're right. I need some co-regulation right now. And that was actually helpful for me in that moment to have them tell me to help to remind me to breathe. So, okay, let's move on so we can wrap this up. Also, you can use color cards or emoji charts, which I've talked about a little bit and talked about, and you can use those for like mood check-ins. And then I think we're almost done. We just have some other things, and I can send this PowerPoint out if you guys want it, but we have some tune-ups that you guys can do. You have deep breaths that you can do, noticing, being mindful. So those are mindfulness tools that we have that you can use. And then that's it. Just the key takeaways is, remember, you can build belonging anywhere, just as long as you approach it from a place of making people feel safe and seen and supported. Remember, it's not about the behavior, but it's about what's happening behind the behavior. And that's the presentation for today. Thank you, guys. I do have some announcements. We do have, real quick, this one is important. Sherelle will be hosting tonight at 6 p.m. a dinner table syndrome presentation, and it's more of a gathering to talk about, we have the holidays coming up, and a lot of deaf people struggle with the dinner table syndrome, which is where hearing family members are signing and talking and everyone's laughing and enjoying the festivities, but the deaf person is being left out. So we will have deaf people and hearing people all coming together to just talk about how do we prepare to be better, to be present for our family members that use sign language and communicate in that way. So, all right, Brenda.
Thank you, Dr. Scruggs, for your presentation. And Sherelle, thank you as well for your time for coming. So it seems like our time is running low for questions, but folks can email me any questions you may have, and then I can forward those on to Angela to answer those.